Joining us tonight, Dr. Kiron Skinner, Director of the Institute for Politics and Strategy at Carnegie Mellon University, and John Hannes, Senior Counselor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Welcome to you both. And Dr. Skinner, let me begin with you. A closed-door session of the Security Council, condemnation of the launch by North Korea, and Ambassador Haley calling for action on the part of the United Nations, accountable, and not just in words, but in action. What do you make of it, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Ambassador Haley's words were correct, but actually, as you know, Lou, and you've talked about it so many times, we have to rely on the United States for leadership in dealing with North Korea and most of the challenges around the world, because the United Nations cannot be counted on. And what I'd like to say is that I think the Trump administration has been very deliberate in the past few days thinking about and speaking about North Korea. There was a much stronger statement from Abe than Trump initially during their visit, but Trump has come out, President Trump, very strong and saying that this is a serious and grave challenge, and there are many options open to the U.S., military, economic, and political, and all of those are now being discussed coming out of the White House.
John Hanna, your thoughts?
No, I agree with the professor, Lou. This is a good start, I think, in the United Nations, but the question is, are there going to be actions? Are there going to be comprehensive sanctions imposed on North Korea? And most importantly, are the Chinese finally going to enforce them? Is President Trump, unlike President Obama, going to be able to pressure and squeeze the Chinese or persuade them to really bring the hammer down on the North? That's the only way I think we're going to be able to bring sufficient economic pressure on this regime to get it to begin to back off from this nuclear and missile program that at some point in the very near future is going to pose a direct threat to the continental United States.
Have we moved toward that line, Dr. Skinner, in which all options have to be on the table to prevent North Korea from adding to the range of their ICBMs, because at that point their threat radius extends to the continental United States?
I think we're there right now, and that's why I think you see a very kind of deliberate and pragmatic approach being put forth by the Trump administration. I think they understand that this is a major test by North Korea, its first geopolitical test in office in less than a month's time, while it's already dealt with Iran's ballistic missile tests, and it's continuing the fight in Iraq and Syria. So I think now with North Korea, we've got to look at all options, and one of the main ones comes out of a U.S. law from last year, which allows the U.S. to impose sanctions on Chinese companies that take part in the North Korean arms market. It may be time to act on that very issue right now.
Are we moving to a position, do you think, here, John, where President Trump is making it clear enough, standing shoulder to shoulder with Prime Minister Abe, his conversations upcoming with Netanyahu, his telephone conversations with more than 50 leaders, the world leaders at least, are getting a pretty good sense of what he is thinking. Is there a way forward here that does not involve military action, either on the part of the United Nations? One can't imagine China falling in line with such a thing, because economic sanctions have not worked against Iran, they have not worked against Russia.
Well, there may be a non-military means of solving this problem in North Korea, Lou, but it will not work. We will not get that non-military means unless there really is a stick on the table and a credible threat that if all else fails, the United States is not going to allow North Korea to threaten us with nuclear-armed ICBMs that can take out not only San Francisco and Los Angeles, but New York and Washington, D.C., too. That is an intolerable threat, and hopefully the United States can rally the world to do something about it. But unless there's a credible threat of American military force together with our key allies in Asia, I don't think that's going to happen.
You know, we have lurking behind all of this, of course, rising tensions with Moscow, rising tensions with Tehran. China is an absolute wild card at this point because there have been conflicting signals from Beijing. This is going to be a tough call for this administration, and a great deal, perhaps, is riding on the next steps of this administration. What do you think, Doctor?
I actually think that the administration has started what you're just talking about. They've looked at the exact same international landscape that you've just described and dispatched General Mattis, our new Secretary of Defense, to the Asian region for the reasons that you've talked about, to reassure the South Koreans and the Japanese, to send a signal to the North Koreans and the Chinese that we mean business, that we do have some military options that don't include the use of force. But, for example, the THAAD missile defense system, speeding that up for the defense of the South Koreans, we've already let the Japanese know that we're defending them in the East China Sea, their right to the territory. So I think we've done some military-type maneuvers already.
Doctor, thanks so much. John Hanna, I'm sorry we're out of time. I promise to begin with you next discussion.
You got a deal.
Will you forgive
Thanks,
me
Lou.
for that? Thanks so much.